but in the end driven by what they think. So when you give anxious people medications that are placebos, 2/3 come back and say, I'm feeling a lot less anxious now. And a third don't, because their biology is so strong that it's a powerful term. Whereas autism, so ADHD is a problem of not thinking. You know what to do, but you don't think. Right? Depression is a problem of clouded thinking. Anxiety is a problem of clouded thinking. You can't see the world through mud-colored glasses. Right? Autism really results from an inability to appreciate what it is in front of you. So I really have to figure out a place to start, which is why it's so hard. Right? It's hard to find a place to start. So I would keep looking before I decided she had autism.
Well, it was when she got tested, we wanted her to go into a private school. Things were working, and they said she needs a diagnosis. We go up to the U, and it was interesting because it was the student evaluating.
In the ed psych department?
I think so. I'm not.
In the autism program or in the education psychology?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
It was just anyway. So they said that you were not sure. We're on the brink of diagnosing her this way or that way. But because you said she likes to play along, we're diagnosing her.
Right, so what does that say? That doesn't give you a lot of hope for the future of mental health professionals coming out of that program, does it? It's part of the reason why I'm very unhappy with that. I think it's the ed psych program. Yeah, isn't that silly? It doesn't make any sense.
Probably ought to get her evaluated.
Well,
we are loving spectrum though. She's come alive in that school.
Right, but and then I've done in-services for them, and I like their program, and now they've started another one, south, and I think bringing Jamie back was a very good idea because the program is not functioning without her, the director. Are you in the north?
We're in north.
Yeah, where Jamie spends most of her time, but half the kids there don't have autism. And I've always said that a good program suits itself to the needs of the students, not to a particular diagnosis. But you can't, if a child wants to attend, if they make the lottery, they attend. And that was a problem when the school opened. I was a consultant when it first opened, and they had chaos. Because they hoped that they were going to get a homogeneous group of children with autism. That's what they cared for. And they got everybody and any parent who was struggling with their child in school, right? Now it's, because you think, well, why would somebody whose child isn't autistic want to go to that program? Siblings, children who are struggling. I think kids with internalizing problems or more withdrawn do better there. I think kids with kind of thinking abilities that are not so impaired that they can't function, but impaired that they're below the norm do better. I mean, I think there's a lot of populations that better in that environment. So I wouldn't take her out of the environment. And I wouldn't worry too much about the diagnostic label unless there's some advantage to you. If you decide you want to put her someplace else, you need Carson Smith money. So then you know what Carson Smith is, right? So,
I know the name, but
so Carson Smith is, again, our legislature. If your child's is in public schools, in special education, has an IEP, you can choose to send them to an approved private fee-for-service school, and the school has to pay that facility part of the tuition. It's named after a kid, Carson Smith, whose parents pushed for it. And we had a program before Spectrum came along. There was a private program in Murray, and I'm blocking on the name of the program. It's been out of business 10 years. I had about 50 kids.
Is it Realms?
No, it wasn't Realms. Realms was in town. No, it began with an M. And Liz Neely worked there. And they were great. And they had classes of three to five kids in class. I had a lot of kids I followed who were high-functioning autism who did really well there. But the two owners were getting older, and they tried to sell it, and they sold it to someone who didn't know what to do, and they had messed with it and closed.
What's the age range?
Oh, they were 7th to 12th grade. So, okay, other questions?
I have an 8-year-old son, and he's at the mainstream. He's pretty high functioning, but he has absolutely no, he doesn't pick up social cues at all. and it's really painful to watch him interact. He will just kind of blaze up to people, and just talk and go on.
Right,
Angry birds, you know.
right.
And go on and on and on and on. And people have, you know, tuned out, and and I watch him at the bus stop, and people are turning their backs to him,
Right.
and you know, it's painful to watch this, but he's oblivious to it.
And it's errors of commission, right? Errors of omission, meaning you just don't engage or you don't interact, but he has errors of commission, which makes other kids, right, move away. So it's low impact, high incidence behavior, right? Doesn't really hurt me, he's not hitting me or anything, but it happens, it's high incidence, it happens so much. So if there's 2 seats on the bus, I won't sit next to him. If there's 1 seat on the bus, I don't want to stand, I'll sit next to him, so what, he'll babble. Does that make sense? Right. So that kind of behavior is easier to work with than the higher incidence, a higher impact where he hits or pushes or he doesn't do that, right?
No, he
Right.
does not.
Right.
He's real
Not
sweet.
physical at all, it's
Right.
really nice.
Yeah.
And is he sufficiently introspective that you can have a conversation with him about it?
We
Does he- does-
have lots of conversations
Does
about
he,
it.
does he answer to suggest that he has some insight?
He will say, I know. And so I
Right, so
don't
now
feel like
it's a negative script you've
Yeah,
got
don't
going.
say, don't bother me with that kind of thing.
Or he'll say, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's not talk about this anymore.
Right. Right. Oh, there's plenty of things you can do. Does he see someone?
We did see a counselor. We had about 10 sessions with a counselor.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen in 10 sessions, but he needs to see someone who kind of will join his journey. And I do think, so one of the things I figured out, I'll tell you this story and then I'm about out of steam here. But one of the things I figured out is that starting kids in these kinds of interventions, again, has to be based on whether they're ready for them. And I worked with a young man, one of my favorite kids of all time, and he loved Barney. This was before Angry Birds. And he's probably 30 now. And he's doing okay. I mean, he's out in the world. And he would come in for an hour, talk my ear off about Barney. He had Barney backpack, he had Barney this, he had Barney that, he had Barney. He was obsessed with Barney. And so now he's, and of course, no other kids don't want to hear about Barney. And now he's getting ready to go to middle school. So his parents have a discussion with him. You can't take the Barney backpack to middle school. And you can't carry a Barney with you. And why not? Because he's so innocent. He doesn't. Why don't they like the Angry Birds? Why, what's the big deal? His bishop had a discussion with him about this, and then I had a discussion with him about it. And finally, he said, I don't get it. Okay, I'll take 1 Barney. And I said, okay, fine. So he doesn't take the Barney backpack, but he's in the lunchroom and he pulls the Barney out. Well, of course. And so there's something about certain behaviors that make you a target. And an interesting animal researcher, he was researching zebras, and he shot the back of a zebra with a red pellet gun so he could find it in the herd. When he came back a few weeks later, couldn't find it. And he shot another one, came back a few weeks later, couldn't find it. So this time he shot the red pellet on the zebra and then followed the zebra. And when the lions came out to hunt, that was the zebra they went after. They have stripes because they blend in. And anything that stands out, and so in some ways, that's part of what happened. Anything that makes you a little different, and it isn't necessarily eyeglasses, or it isn't, who knows what it is, but anything that makes you different from what is expected. So he was getting old. He had a lot of problems. And I couldn't convince him, why. He would just get on, why don't people like Barney? I don't get it, And I said, that's not the problem here, And one day, his mother called, left a message. We've had a breakthrough. He was in his room watching Barney, which is what he did on his VCR. And he closed the door. This was a kid who got dressed and didn't close the door. The mother thought, uh-oh, what is he doing in there? He's 13 and she opened the door. He was watching Barney. She said, why'd you close the door? He answered, because I suddenly realized what Dr. Sam said. you're gonna think I'm a baby if I watch Barney. So I close the door. Now that's 2 steps for mankind, not 1. The first step is he realizes that people form ideas about him, and he may not like the ideas they form about him. And 2, he can do something about it, and in this case, he still wants to engage in the behavior, so he'll hide. Right? And from that day on, he didn't bring Barney to school anymore. And I figured out why I failed with so many kids trying to begin teaching them this kind of process is they weren't ready. And some kids are ready when they're 7, and some kids, I don't know how the age groups you guys do, but some kids are ready when they're 13, and some adults are now, they still don't get it. But until you can take enough of somebody else's perspective to appreciate that they might form ideas about you, and you may not like the ideas that they form and may not want them to have those ideas, you're not a candidate for individual counseling. Maybe you're a candidate for some kind of group experience, but it's probably not going to take until, this is my personal opinion, until you can internalize. So when I ask, is he aware, I keep drilling at him in a patient way to see, does he have an appreciation of why the other kids turn away? And if he says, they just are, they're going to think I'm crazy because I just keep talking about this, but I really like this. Okay, now we can do something about it. So here's a blog where everybody talks about Angry Birds, and here's a club where everybody does Angry Birds, and here's where we're not going to talk about Angry Birds. And then we have to see, does he have the self-discipline to follow it? But there are things you can do. There are definitely things you can do. And a lot of the kids that I followed have now grown up. Some have even gone on tracking missions, believe it or not, which has been interesting. I just had one boy, but he wanted to go, but they did some screening with the church and at social services and said no. And he's a very interesting kid, but his autism, and I'll leave you with this, he had a periventricular, grade 3 periventricular hemorrhage at birth. His brain bled. And probably 20% of infants who are born with hemorrhages like that develop autism. And so his autism, again, a problem with diagnosis, his autism is different from others' autism. The first thing I do in research is I say, well, your child has autism. Okay, does he have seizures? Yes, he's out of my study. Why? Because there's a higher incidence of autism than epilepsy. I don't want epilepsy to be the reason that he has autism. I want it to be genetic. That's what I'm studying. All right. What about your kid? Does he have autism? Yes. Oh, he's got Fragile X? He's out of the study. Why? Because the incidence of autism in kids with Fragile X is high. So tuberous sclerosis, neurofibromatosis, you go down the line for all these genetics disorders, the incidence of autism is much higher. Why is that? Well, I think it's because socialization isn't isolated to one little part of the brain. Socialization is like a big part of what our brain has evolved to do. It's how we survive for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years in the earlier species. And so, if you have trouble socializing and I'm going to study autism, I want to make sure it's not caused by any of these other kinds of problems, but I can understand why the incidence of autism is so much higher in all of these other conditions that disrupt different parts of the brain. What you need to know is that the diagnosis of autism in the DSM, that's how they create that diagnostic criteria. Your child has epilepsy, not in the study. Your child has Fragile X, not in the study. We have a diagnostic protocol of children with autism spectrum disorder who do not have other potential comorbid causes. And my favorite story is Thomas. And Thomas was a normally developing child, and at 18 months was in a terrible automobile accident. And they didn't think he would live. Jack Walker did not think that he was going to live. And he lived. And it was a long recovery. And as he recovered, he went through every kind of psychiatric condition there was. And the first time I saw him, he was 2.5. He wouldn't wear shoes, walked on his toes, didn't talk. And the week before I started seeing him, some of you know me have seen some of these pictures because I've known him for a long time. He came in my playroom and he started writing words on the marker board. Wasn't talking. And his mother said he started doing that a week ago. And he was just spelling words that he'd seen. And he eventually starts to talk. He's rather hyperactive. He has all of these atypical behaviors. This boy is now